You may be seated. Thank you, guys. Hey, inside your program, our listening guide, sort of our roadmap for today. So if you'd like to pull it out, it has our passages in there. And we're in a series called Looking Back in Order to Go Forward. And, very often, right, when we think that, God, we're ready, give us that promotion, or let's go into the next chapter of life, or this new event, or this program, or, whatever. We're like, come on, God, let's go. And don't you feel like sometimes God is like asleep at the wheel? Like sometimes he's like holding you back, it seems like, or he's not even there. And you're going, come on, God, I'm so ready. My heart's just bursting. And that's normal, by the way. Here's what we're going to look at today. And this concept is that often we think we're ready, but we're not. And God will sometimes not just leave us there, sometimes he'll even pull us back a little bit. And if you remember a few weeks ago, I had a slingshot. It was a little finger rocket, and I pulled that thing back and I shot it into the balcony. Woo! 11 o'clock, we did it. Didn't work at 9:30. Took out Ethel, but she's okay, But it's a great picture that sometimes in order to go forward, we got to go back. And today we're going to see this principle in Scripture where God doesn't have him go sit back, but he has him take a pause. Because there's always work that God does in us when we're pulled back. There's always purpose to it. So let's look at it. It's in Joshua, but let me give you the context here for those of you so we understand what's going on. If you are familiar with the book of Exodus, that happens before Joshua. And if you have no idea what happens in Exodus, here it is. A long, long time ago in Genesis, God talked to a man named Abraham. He said, you're going to be the father of many, many people, and you're going to be my people. Like I'm calling you out from just all of civilization, and you're going to be different. And you're going to be the model of a people who have a relationship with Yahweh God, the creator, but he's not just a creator. He's a personal God. And again, not just one to fear and tremble, but one to know and to have a personal daily relationship with. Well, a lot of things happen. God's people, the Israelites or Hebrews, they're in Egypt. They're now slaves, and they've been there for 400 years. They're building and laboring and all this. And a guy named Moses is there, and fast forward, he leads them out of Egypt. He has to do a lot of negotiation, a lot of things happen for the Pharaoh, which is the king of Egypt, to let them go. And matter of fact, even after he lets them go, he changes his mind going, man, we lost all these laborers. This is horrible. Go get them. And so the people, they left Egypt. They're standing by the Red Sea in Egypt. And they have to get across it because that's what's in front of them. And behind them is the Egyptian army, and they're coming to get them. There's only it's an impossible situation unless God intervenes, and that's what he does. You know the story. He blows in the water, it divides, and they walk across dry land. And then when they all get across, the Egyptian army's coming across, the waves come down and sweep them away and destroy them all. Okay, so that's the reference. Now, they have probably about a 2-week journey to get to the promised land, this land that God has set aside for them. But because the people were so wishy-washy with their trust, like they'll say, we trust you, God. We know you can do anything. And then they'll complain, going, oh, I don't like this. And it was better back in Egypt, which is just the way we are, We're all hot and heavy for God, and then other times we're all hot and heavy about us, and we don't like what God's doing, and we complain and don't believe he can do what needs to be done. And so wishy-washy. God had to allow them, that generation, to die off because they were not to be the people. If they were to start this nation, this group with land and other responsibilities, it would have failed. And again, it was all because of their lack of faith. And there were only 2 guys from the initial generation that actually made it into the promised land. One of them is named Joshua. And this is where we pick up the story. There's a book. It's the 6th book in the Old Testament. And it's named Joshua. So here's what it says in chapter 1, verses 1 and 2. After the death of Moses, the Lord's servant, the Lord spoke to Joshua, son of Nun, Moses' assistant, and he said, Moses, my servant, is dead. Therefore, the time has come for you to lead these people, the Israelites, across the Jordan River into the land that I am giving them. So let me show you. I got a map here, just to put in context here. Okay, Egypt is south. It's way to the left and out of the picture. But if you look at that top red line, okay, that little body of water right above it is the Sea or Lake of Galilee. And above that, towards the very, very top of that map, that's where Mount Hermon is. If you're in Israel and you want to go snow skiing, that's where you go, because there's always snow there, okay? So what happens when the snow begins to melt in the warmer times, right, spring, all of it goes down the mountain, and it is what feeds into the Lake Galilee. And at the very bottom is the Dead Sea. It's dead because nothing lives in there. It's all salty and nothing can live in there. But right in between, which this map doesn't really show it so well, there's a place called the Jordan River. You know, it's where Jesus was baptized. A lot of things have happened in the Jordan River. It's not a real big river, but it all begins with Mount Hermon, which is about over 9,000 feet elevation, which if you're from Florida, that's really high, right? 20 feet above sea level is good. That's what most of us are around here. But over 9,000, like 9,300. And then if you follow the Jordan River and you get to the Dead Sea, it's like 1,300 feet below sea level. So in just a few miles, it's over a 10,000 feet drop. Okay, so it's really a unique landscape. Lake of Galilee, great fresh water, fish, vegetation, agriculture life over there. Jordan River has life, and then of course as you get lower and lower, it's dead, nothing. Okay, now what I want to show you, right above the bottom sea, the Dead Sea, that little red line that goes from the right to the left, and then has like a little U-turn, that's where they crossed over the Jordan River. So when they're going to make reference to that, I just want you to see where it is. It's not way up high north, but it's down there pretty far south. Okay, let me show you the next picture here. This is a little bit different angle, just to give you a little bit of picture what the topography is like. Notice there's mountains on either side, and it just goes down into a valley where the Jordan River is. Okay, this is, you see at the bottom is the Dead Sea. Way up north is the Sea of Galilee. There's that bigger thing of water. And right in the middle is Adam, Hebrew word for beginning or man. That, they're going to make reference to that. That's where, in our story, something happens. We'll get to that in a moment. But if you see the black line with the camels, follow that over, that's approximately where they crossed over the Jordan River. And then it's the fortified city of Jericho is over there to the left. So that's the first city they go to. Okay, so just wanted to show that to you. Imagine all the snow melting, and you not only have Mount Hermon, you got all these other little rivers pouring into the Jordan River. At springtime, it floods. Here's a picture of the Jordan River at springtime. Okay, now that doesn't look, have you ever seen pictures of people getting baptized at the Jordan River? It's calm. It looks like a nice little swimming pool. You're like, oh, it's so peaceful. Oh, that's what it looks like in March and April. Okay, you better have a helmet and everything else because you're going downstream if you get caught in that. And not only is it just like more violent and raging, it's 10 times wider than what it normally is. Again, because all that water just goes through there, so it's rushing. This is the time of year that they're crossing over the Jordan. So some of us will go, well, God, you blew it on the timing of this one. Like, come on, this is impossible to get across. Because again, I would think Jordan River is pretty easy. And normally it really wouldn't be that big of a deal, but it certainly is this time of year. So, just for context, let's look at it. Joshua chapter 3. We continue our story. It was harvest season, and as the Jordan River was overflowing its banks, Jordan River was, but as soon as the feet of the priests, they were the first guys to go across into this river, as soon as the feet of the priests who were carrying the ark touched the water at the river's edge, the water above that point began backing up a great distance away at a town called Adam. That was that little city I pointed out. That's where they're saying the water just stopped. It blocked it. it says, which is near Zarethan. The water below, or south from that point, flowed into the Dead Sea until the riverbed was dry. Then all the people crossed over near the town of Jericho. So that's where they crossed over. I showed you in the map. Now, we'll fast forward a little bit. Chapter 4. When all the people had crossed the Jordan, the Lord said to Joshua, "Now choose 12 men, one from each tribe, and tell them, take 12 stones from the very place where the priests are standing in the middle of the Jordan. Carry them out and pile them up at the place where you will camp tonight." So at this point, God didn't tell them where they're going to camp out, but they're going across the river. And then verses 19 through 24. The people crossed the Jordan on the 10th day of the first month. For us, that's April. Okay, then they camped at Gilgal, just east of Jericho. And it was there at Gilgal that Joshua piled up the 12 stones taken from the Jordan River. Then Joshua said to the Israelites, "In the future, your children will ask, 'What do these stones mean?' Then you can tell them, 'This is where the Israelites crossed the Jordan on dry ground. For the Lord your God dried up the river right before your eyes, and he kept it dry until you were all across, just as he did at the Red Sea when he dried it up until we had all crossed over.'" So again, that's a reference to the earlier time with Moses 40 years ago. 24. He, God, did this, dried up the Jordan, so that all the nations of the earth might know that the Lord's hand is powerful, and so you might fear the Lord your God forever. So we have a sign. They take 12 stones and they make a pile. Now, don't think of little rocks, because it talks about they had to put them on their shoulder, and we presume one per guy. I don't know, but 12 somewhat big rocks is whatever they can carry. And they took them to their camp at Gilgal and set them down, and they made this monument. In verse 6, some translations use the word monument, some use the word sign. Here's what that word means in the original language. It means proof or evidence. It's a visible object that authenticates something. So because this is here, it proves something else. So it's not so much about the thing, the monument, it's the meaning attached to it. That's in the Old Testament, that's always what it has to do. When there's a sign, it's not so much what it is, the distinguishing mark or the thing. It's always about what is it to do? What is its purpose? Again, that's always consistent throughout the Old Testament. Now, here's what I want to point out, a couple things. For the 12 stones, it was not just a nice gesture to do. It wasn't just a nice, well, let's say thank you to Phil. You know, I mean, Phil was really important here, helping us across. So, hey, Phil, grab a stone. Okay, we're going to remember you. It wasn't that at all. It was directed by God. All right? God said to do this. So that's what gives it authority. All right? Again, God's saying, do this. But also, it was defined by God. See, they couldn't just attach whatever meaning they want to it because they felt good or, or whatever. Maybe, I don't know. God defined what this is supposed to be about, what the meaning attached to it is. That's true for any monument. It should be. Again, whoever creates the monument, if I created a statue, or you did, and you could say, hey, this is to help us remember Aunt Susie or whatever. Well, I can't say, no, it reminds me of Aunt Louise. Sorry, it really is about Aunt Louise. You are the one who made it. You get to determine what it is. Okay, and that's the same of here with God. He directed it, told him to do it, but also he's the one who defines it. Now, here's a couple things that I think are important when it comes to Old Testament monuments, and we'll see even for us. First one, the first bullet there, is the monument is never to be the object of worship. Never the object of worship. Nowhere does Joshua say, we need to bow down here, we need to have a celebration here, we need to all camp out around here. He just said build it, and that's all it was. And the reason why is the monument is not the focus. It's God. God is always the focus, like whatever has our attention. And so I think when you have a monument, the moment when you look at it and you hear the story of the meaning of it, and your mouth goes, wow, and it drops because you're in awe, you like it, you're not awing over the monument, though it can be pretty and you can appreciate it. It's always about God. So the monument is never the object of worship. And second bullet, don't confuse the monument with the mission. They crossed the river. Yay. I mean, that's really good news. They all survived. They have now a monument to go, yay, we made it, and now future generations will know. Yay. But that's not the end of the story. You know what happens next? They're getting ready for war. Like they have to go conquer and take over their land. So God's going, here's this, but now you go get them. Okay, so here's what I want to say. Whenever you have a monument, that's a great thing to celebrate, but that's never the object of worship, and it's not the mission. It's not the end of the story. There's always more. And so for them, they had to go on to fight. And here's what's always true about God. You know what his mission is? It's not building a monument. It's not even getting them into a land. So that was part of the plan. His mission is always about calling people into relationship with him. This is huge. God doesn't care about the things, the stuff. What's priority number one is the relationships. It's always about the people and the relationship, not about the stuff. From the very beginning to the very end, this story is God calling people in their relationship with him. Now, let's talk about us for a moment. If you're a guest, I hope you have some kind of application for you. But for us at Church by the Sea, we have a monument. We're sitting in it, right? This is a pretty cool pile of rocks right here that we have. And, we're going to talk all about it in the next few weeks over and over because, it's part of the story. And as we celebrate 75 years, it's pretty amazing when you hear some of the stories. Because 75 years ago, we were in World War II. They had everything rationed and all this. And there was nothing here at the beach. A few fishermen. Matter of fact, when they dropped off some of the wood and some of the concrete blocks and all that, first of all, there wasn't many people that could help put this together. And so you got the pastor and other people volunteering, and they're trying to put this thing together. Thankfully, someone knew what they were doing because it's still standing, right? We hope, right? And another thing, the people, again, you can just go to Home Depot and fill up the truck and come on back. You had to order it, and it took weeks. And matter of fact, when they dropped off the wood and some of the heavy things, they wouldn't even bring it to the site. They just dropped it off on Gulf Boulevard. And our guys had to go all the way out to the street and carry it. I mean, all of this stuff. It's a pretty amazing story. So come back over the next few weeks and you'll hear more. But here's the point. This monument is not the end of the story. Matter of fact, I think the same principles apply to us. The first one being that the monument is never the object of worship. We like it a lot. It's pretty. Matter of fact, they don't make churches like this anymore. And that's why, so many people have gotten married here. And even if they don't go to church, they still think this is their church, which I love. This is a place where, a lot of churches have to send people out. Here, people come to us. All you people from Indiana and Michigan and all these other places, you come here and we love it. We love it. But the story is not about the building, right? Here's the truth. This is a building. It's good. We love it. Certainly when it's raining, we really love it, right? But it's a building. If you spill coffee on the carpet will probably look better than what it does now. It'll smell better, right? It's just stuff. So this is not the object of worship. The story is not that they built a church building. Anyone can write that in their story. The story is all about what God has done. It's really about the people. That's always the story. And really, we celebrate Jesus, not buildings. We don't serve a building. I've been to some churches that do. That's crazy. We serve Jesus. Second principle that I think is true is, we don't want to confuse the monument with the mission. God's mission is always about people. It's about relationships, and that's really true for us. We have to remember that. It's the stories of life's change, of what God's done in our life. And you know what? Maybe a hurricane comes this year and this building's gone. May it not happen, but if the Lord allows it to happen, oh well. Mission goes on. Story of Church by the Sea and really of what Jesus is doing here on the beaches goes on. Now let me say this. I got to be clear. I'm not saying we don't care for our building at all. There's a whole lot of caring that needs to happen. And I want to thank Kevin McInerney, my friend back there, and Mark. They painted the fellowship hall in one day this week. So yay, God. Thank you. Listen, we got about 100 other walls that need painting too, including inside and outside. We've done a lot this year, and there's more to do. Now, here's what I want to tell you. We got to take care of it, right? Because I want the next generation to look at this monument and go, wow, not what a cool building, but wow, what a great God. When they hear the story of what God has done over the last 75 years and the next 75 and the next 75, that it's the story of what God has done and what he's done in the lives of people. But if we don't take care of it, there's not going to be a monument left to look at, especially here in this saltwater area. Things don't do well, right? So we take care of it, but this is not what we worship, and it's not what the mission is all about. We worship God, Jesus, and the mission is all about trying to get people to follow him because it's all about relationships. And we looked at it last week or week prior. Really, the mission is Jesus's. He told us what it is. Love God, love others, and make disciples. And in that, it's really could be summarized by offering hope. That's what we as Christians need to do. It's what us as a church needs to do. Hopefully with the monument, but if something happens to it, we continue. Again, the monument is a reminder. But the object of our worship is Jesus, and the mission is help people follow Jesus. So let me give you a couple real quick. We'll end with this in your notes. A God monument reminds me, number one, God is able. Man, people need to know God is able. Whatever you got going on, often God does his work or he moves when it seems like it's the very, very end of the story. Like it's impossible. But that's usually when God steps in. And the story in your life, in mine, is God is able. Trust him. He can do the impossible. And you never know where the story takes a U-turn because God steps in. I mean, that's what the story is with, dividing the Jericho River. That's what the story is here with our monument here and the lives of what God's done, how he's changing people. God can do the impossible. The second truth is that I will be challenged, but I can still be confident. As you're obeying God and you're sort of following what you think the plan is, you'll be challenged. And, some people think, I got a flat tire. God, why are you doing this? And we think that's the end of the story. But it's not. There will always be challenges yet because we know God is with us. We can be confident. I mean, when they built, the monument over there at the 12 stones, they crossed the river and they, ate, and then they got ready for battle. And they had all sorts of surprises. That's life. But we can still be confident in God's mission if we continue to follow him. And that's point number 3, I think. Success. My success and blessing rest in humble obedience. You know what? God's will works when we do what he says. Now it's not because God rewards us because we did the right thing. That's not how God operates. But God's got his will going on. And the more that humbly we say, God, I trust you, and I step into it, and I'm in the position to where God can use me, and use me in just that sweet spot, it goes so much better. Whenever any of us say, all right, God, follow me. Come on, we're going to go get them. We're going on mission. And we think of all these things we're going to do, and we got plans and all this. That's usually when it falls apart because that's not God's plan. No matter how passionate you are, you have to let God lead it. Let me give you an illustration. Again, God doesn't reward us because we do the right thing. It's just that I think when we're humble and we obey him, we do things even when we don't understand, we're in the position where God can use us. My daughter is trying to learn how to drive. Emphasis on trying. Okay. Spring, are you here? No, she's gone. She's at practice. She's in the fellowship hall. Okay, so we'll talk about it. Now, things work so much better when she's humble and she obeys what we say. Stop is a very important word, right? Especially when you have to say it with 4 exclamation points. Okay. If she decided, you know what, I think I know what I'm going to do, and I think I know a better way to get there, you just hold on, Dad. We don't operate that way. That's not the sweet spot of relationship or physical safety, all right? And so the sweet spot, things work when there's a humility and she obeys. She does what is told to her. And that's, I think, the picture of what, again, even Exodus is all about. God's able to work with us when we're not fighting against him. And so you want to know, what does 2019 hold? You know, we don't really know, but here's what I promise you. God is able to do the impossible. He really is. Now, you're going to have challenges when you do what God's will is, what you think he's calling you to do. There will always be challenges, but you can still be confident if God has called you to do this. Third, the sweet spot for experiencing him, humble obedience. You may not understand it. It may seem crazy. I mean, like, different than what common sense would tell you even, but if you know it's God, that's always the sweet spot for experiencing his blessing and his favor, and then seeing just, again, the success of God's will in your life. Monuments are great. Looking back is good, but we don't live there. We just pause for a moment, get all the remembrance and the meaning that is attached to it, but we got to keep going forward. Same is true for us at Church by the Sea. We're celebrating 75 years. It's not the end of the story. Story didn't end when they finished this building. It continues. So monuments are good, but never what we worship, and they're never the mission. There's a story about a young executive. His name's Josh, and he lived in Chicago. And it was one of those moments in life, you know, where you sort of get that first promotion, and you feel like, man, I'm going to start climbing that ladder. I'm like, I got this big thing, and whew, it's like, I see my dream starting to happen. And so to help celebrate it, he got a nice, black, shiny, luxury car, and he's just enjoying himself, and he's driving down the road, and there was one road he was on. It was like in a residential area, you know, and so he's being careful, make sure no one, kids dart out between the cars into the street, but he's just enjoying life and thinking, wow, this is just a sweet spot I am living in. Then all of a sudden, a brick comes flying, and it hits the side of his car. Boom! And he hit the brakes, and he stopped, and he got out, and he saw the boy who did it, and he said, what are you doing? You just dented my car. That's going to cost you money. And he looked at the boy, and the boy's crying. He says, I'm sorry, mister, I'm sorry. But that was the only way I could get anyone to stop. You see, my little brother went over the curb in his wheelchair, and he fell out. And he's hurt, and I'm not strong enough to get him into his chair. I need help. And, you know, this young executive is trying to process all this information and take all these little bits, especially the new information, and sort of make meaning of it. And so he helps the boy up and wipes his cuts and scrapes, and again, just head still spinning and emotionally not sure where he should be, because he went from extreme anger to extreme empathy and not sure, how do you even step into this? Like, what is my role? Well, he walked with them, made sure they got home, that the little brother got the big brother in the wheelchair home. And the story goes how he took his time walking back and just slowly walked. And matter of fact, as he got in the car, and something changed. Matter of fact, he never even got his car fixed. He kept the dent in it, his new car, because he wanted it to remind him Don't go so fast. Don't be so distracted with the things that you miss out on the main mission of what we should be about. Yeah, for us, I'm like a cat. I'm really distracted with something shiny. A lot of things get my attention, and it's so easy to miss out on what's truly most important. For us at Church by the Sea, or maybe in your family, you have some kind of monuments or some markers or something. Listen, celebrate them. But don't make that the object of worship. Don't confuse the monument to be your mission. Mission is always about relationship with your family, but even more importantly, at a higher level, God's relationship with you. That's what he's pursuing. And as we embrace him, Jesus as our Savior, our mission is grow our relationship with God. But then even more so, embrace the relationship with other people to bring them to God. Here we say it, helping people follow Jesus. And may that always be our mission here. If you would, please bow your heads.